Hello, welcome everyone. So as part of our first agenda, that is creating basic end-to-end e-commerce website, we'll go through Angular overview. Here we will be discussing why we are using Angular framework over traditional framework. Then we will be setting up our local environment. And after setting up our local environment, we'll start Visual Studio Code and we'll write our first program. Haha. So basically, we will be using TypeScript for writing our first program, and then we'll see how to declare variables and arrays in TypeScript, how to loop over the array, and then we'll create few classes in TypeScript. Then later on, we will move on to basics of Angular, where we will create a dummy Angular project, and we will see how the components are created and how we can make use of the components to render those components in the UI. And slowly we'll start building our real-time e-commerce website. So in this real-time e-commerce website, we will see how the UI communicates with the backend, and we will see the data flow from database to Spring Boot and from Spring Boot to Angular, that is in the UI. So now let's move on to Angular overview. So Angular is basically a framework for building modern single page applications. So it consists of basically header, footer, body, and there can be n numerous number of components. So let's take an example. Let's say that we have this is the slide you can see. So this slide we can divide it into multiple segments, and those segments we can consider it as a component. So whenever the user makes any changes to that particular component, only that particular component will be reloaded and other components will not be reloaded. So that is the advantage of using Angular framework over traditional framework. So in traditional framework, whenever we make any changes in the UI, the whole page reloads whenever the request comes from the user, and the user data makes any changes to the UI, and that the UI data goes to the backend, and from the backend whenever the response comes, then the whole HTML page reloads. But in case of Angular, only that particular component will be reloaded. And as you know that Angular communicates with backend using REST API, and there are so many applications which are currently using Angular framework. So here you can see that there are numerous applications which are currently using. So you can go through it. I'll do one thing. I'll share the link with you so that you can go through it. So now let's move on to the next section. So in this next section, we have to install few of the applications. Like we have to install Visual Studio Code, we have to install Node npm, and then finally we have to install tsc is used for TypeScript, where basically TypeScript will be installed, and then using TypeScript we'll be creating our first program in the front end side. So here you can see directly you can go to the browser, and then from this browser you can download Windows installer for your 64-bit or 32-bit as per your configuration, and then you just have to run the installer. So here if you see here, this is the one you can download it. This is MSI file, and you can just follow the steps that will be mentioned in the installation process, and you can, once the installation is done, then you have to do two things to check if it is installed properly. So first of all, you have to check it using Node version. So Node space dash version, then it will show you the version, which version is installed, and then you can check for npm version. So similarly, you have to go to any command line, and then you have to type npm space dash version. So if it is installed properly, then it will show version for both Node and npm, and then you can install Visual Studio Code in your local machine. It's simple, just you have to visit this website, and then from there you can download Visual Studio Code for your Windows machine, and then you just have to run the installer and follow these steps. Later on, just you have to open your command line, and then you just have to type this command npm install -g TypeScript. So this is the version that will be installed, and -g is basically it will be installed globally, so that you will be able to execute this tsc command from anywhere from your laptop. So tsc dash version, when you execute this command, then it will just show you the version of the TypeScript. So yeah, so let's do one thing. So let's stop here, and then I hope that you guys will be doing your setup in your local, and then once the setup is done, we will move on to the next section, where we will be moving on to our Visual Studio Code. We will write our first code, and we will debug and see how exactly the TypeScript is being converted into JavaScript, and when we execute the JavaScript, then how exactly we can see the output. So that's all for this video. See you in the next video. Thank you.